confused glance from Megan. Romanda's eyes remained steady on Egwene's. Elida will be removed one way or another, Egwene said calmly, setting her teacup down on its dish. Her hand did not shake. What had the women learned? How? Romanda grimaced faintly at her tea, as if after all it lacked sufficient honey, or in disappointment that Egwene had not said more. The woman shifted on her stool with the air of a swordswoman setting herself for another attack, blade coming up. The things you've said about the kin, Mother, that there are over 1,000 of them rather than a few dozen, that some are 500 or 600 years old. She shook her head over the impossibility. How could all of that have escaped the tower? She was challenging, not asking a question. We only recently learned how many Wilders there are among the sea folk, Egwene replied gently, and we still aren't sure how many there really are. Romanda's grimace was not so small this time. It had been the yellow that first confirmed hundreds of sea folk Wilders in Ilion alone. First blow to Egwene. One blow was not enough to finish Romanda, though, or even to wound her very badly. We will have to hunt them down once our business is done here, she said in grim tones. Letting a few dozen remain in Ebudar and Tar Valon just to help us trace runaways was one thing, but we cannot allow 1,000 Wilders to remain organized. She put even more contempt into the word, into the idea of Wilders organizing than she did into the rest. Mirel and Megan were watching closely, listening. Megan was even leaning forward, she was so intent. Neither knew more than the stories Egwene had spread, which everyone assumed came through Swan's eyes and ears. Well over 1,000, Egwene corrected, and not one a Wilder. All women sent away from the tower, except for a few runaways who evaded capture. She did not raise her voice, but she made each point firmly, meeting Romanda's gaze. In any case, how do you propose to hunt them down? They are spread through every country, in every sort of occupation. Ebudar was the only place they ever gathered or met other than by chance, and all those fled when the Shonchan came. Since the Trolloc Wars, the kin have allowed the tower to know only what they wanted known. 2,000 years, hiding under the White Tower's nose. Their numbers have grown while the tower's numbers dwindled. How do you propose to find them now, among all the Wilders out there that the tower has always ignored because they were too old to become novices? Kinswomen don't stand out in any way, Romanda. They use the power almost as often as Aes Sedai, but they show age like anyone else, if more slowly. If they want to remain hidden, we will never be able to find them. And that was several more blows for Egwene, with none taken. Romanda wore a faint sheen of sweat on her forehead, a sure sign of desperation in an Aes Sedai. Mirel was sitting very still, but Megan seemed about to fall off her stool onto her nose, no matter how steady it was. Romanda licked her lips. If they channel, they would achieve the look. If they age, they cannot be channeling very often, if at all. And neither way could they live 500 or 600 years. No more dissimulation, it seemed. There is only one real difference between Aes Sedai and the kin, Egwene said quietly. The words still seemed loud. Even Romanda appeared to be holding her breath. They left the White Tower before they could swear on the oath rod. There. It was in the open, finally. Romanda jerked as if she had taken a mortal blow. You've not taken the oaths yet, she said hoarsely. Do you mean to abandon them? To ask sisters to abandon them? Mirel or Megan gasped, perhaps both. No, Egwene said sharply. The 3 oaths are what make us Aes Sedai, and I will swear on the oath rod as soon as it is ours. Drawing a deep breath, she modulated her tone. But she leaned toward the other woman, too, trying to draw her in, to include her, to convince her. She almost stretched out a hand. As it is, sisters retire to spend their last years in quiet, Romanda. Wouldn't it be better if those were not their last years? If sisters retired into the kin, they could tie the kin to the tower. There would be no need for a futile hunt then. She had gone this far, she might as well go the last step. The oath rod can unbind as well as bind. Megan thudded to the carpets on her knees and scrambled up, brushing at her skirts as indignantly as if she had been pushed. Mirelle's olive face looked a little pale. Moving slowly, Romanda set her teacup on the edge of the writing table and stood, drawing her shawl around her. Expressionless, she stood staring down at Egwene, while Theodrin settled her yellow-embroidered cloak on her shoulders, fastened the golden pin, and arranged the folds as carefully as any lady's maid. Only then did Romanda speak, in a voice like stone. When I was a little girl, I dreamed of becoming Aes Sedai. From the day I reached the White Tower, I tried to live as an Aes Sedai.
How's your eating going,
Southsider? And I will die as Aes Sedai. This cannot be allowed. She turned smoothly to go, but she knocked over the stool.
Hey, Sports Talk, how you doing? Good to see you. It's been a little while.
Her, with concern on her
Hope
face.
you're doing well, bro.
Mother, Mirelle drew a deep breath, fingers plucking at her deep.
Right. I was wondering what happened to you, Sports Talk. I've still been going going live every night. I think
I have laid out the facts, Egwene said calmly.
YouTube's not sending my notifications out.
Would you choose to die?
It's hot inside. Damn, that sucks, Sports Talk. That's how it's getting here now. It's our heat starting to come back. I think it was in the low to mid 90s today. I missed you too, Sports Talk. I'm definitely glad to see you. And
she got up and set the stool back upright. Even that failed to them further
appreciate
than
Sports Talk.
Apologies for making her see to that herself. Then they
I'm about to do a
silent reflection.
dab out of my
She tried to return
Dr.
to
Dabber.
Swan's folders. The stalemate at the Stone of Tyr was dragging on, and no one admitted to any idea of how it would end. But not long after Romanda's departure, Lelaine arrived. Unlike Romanda, the slender blue sitter was alone and poured her own tea. Settling onto the empty stool, she tossed her fur-lined cloak back over both shoulders and let it hang from a silver cloak pin set with large sapphires. She wore her shawl, too.
Hell yeah, I try to be a Sports Talk.
Lelaine was more direct than Romanda, or so it might have seemed on the surface. Her eyes held a sharp glitter.
Hell yeah, appreciate it, bro.
Crimped in the chances of making any sort of agreement with the Black Tower, she murmured over her teacup, inhaling the fumes. And then there's poor Shio to deal with. Perhaps Mirelle will take him. 2 of her 3 belonged to someone else first. No one else has ever saved 2 warders whose Aes Sedai died. Egwene was not the only one to hear special emphasis in that.
Got to charge this up again, it's getting low.
She had 2 secrets to hide, and one was that she had 4 warders. The passing of Lan Mandragoran's bond from Moiraine to her had been something done in hundreds of years. Today it was looked upon like against his will. Something not done in even more hundreds of years. 3 is enough for me, she said breathlessly. You will excuse me, Mother?
I'll have to do that one of these days.
Megan laughed softly as Mirelle left the tent, walking fast. Not so fast that she failed to...
Hell yeah, Sports Talk. That sounds good.
Fell, though. Of course, Lelaine said.
Me and most hated my brother, we went to
perhaps poor Hugh will do for husband.
our mom's for dinner. She made some spaghetti.
Megan put in.
Why am I coughing? Because I'm smoking wax.
There was no maliciousness in her voice. She was simply stating a fact. Theo was a very large man. I think I know a young blue who might take him. She isn't interested in men that way. Lelaine nodded and said the young girl had found her voice. Greens can be very odd. Take Elaine for example. Actually, I never thought Elaine would choose green. I had her marked out for the blue. The girl has a deft feel for the currents in politics, though she also has to wander into deeper waters.
I never really had it with any meatballs in it. Sports talk.
This was not at all like romantic.
It's usually just ground beef, spaghetti sauce, and
blade appearing out of nowhere.
Noodles.
Did Lelaine know about Mirel and Lamb? Had she sent someone to Camelin, and if so, how much had she learned?
Either one's good.
Whether Ramonda had also felt off balance and dazed. Do you think Chiron's murder is enough to stop an agreement? She said. For all anyone knows, this could be Logain returning for some mad revenge. Why in the light had she said that? She needs to put on her tongue and keep her wits. Or more likely, poor fool from the farm around here, or one of the bridge towns. Lelaine's smile deepened, and it was mocking, not amusing.
Oh shit, hell yeah, Southsider.
The woman had not shown this much disrespect.
That actually sounds pretty good.
If Logain wanted revenge, Mother, I suspect he would be in the White Tower trying to kill Reds. Despite her smile, her voice was smooth and level. A disturbing contrast. Perhaps that was her intention.
Now you like
Perhaps it's a
hot Cheetos? Nice. Those ain't too
he
bad.
might remove Elida, but that would be easier than she.
I don't think I really have a preference on those.
No, Chiron won't stop an agreement any more than Anaya did. But the two combined will make sisters worry even harder about safeguards and strictness. We may need these men, but we must be certain we are in control. Complete control.
Yeah?
A small nod.
That's mainly what I eat, is a lot of spicy food.
There might be difficulties bringing them to accept.
I'm
she said.
Half Native American and half Mexican, so
positive talent for understatement.
Spicy food is a norm for me.
The water bond could be modified slightly, Michael said. As it is,
oh yeah.
Make the man do as you wish with a
Oh, I am.
But the need to tweak could be removed quite easily. That sounds too much like compulsion, Egwene said firmly. She had learned that weave from Mogadeen, but only to work on how to counter it. The thing was filth. The theft
but this one would definitely
of their whole being.
Make you cough up a lung.
Someone who was compelled did anything you ordered, anything, and believed it was their own choice. Just thinking about it made her feel dirty.
Protein bars.
Almost as levelly as Lelaine had, though.
Not necessarily, no.
Smooth as her face, she had no thoughts of filth. Compulsion was used on sisters in Cairo. That seems certain now. But I was talking about the bond. A different thing entirely.
Yeah, part native and part Mexican.
Egwene could not keep the incredulity out of her voice.
Like you've seen Young Guns.
Aside from that, who is
kind of like Chavez.
Even if every
just not Navajo. Different tribe.
There aren't enough sisters. That's if you can find one who doesn't mind
being
bonded to a man who is going to go mad. Megan nodded at each point as if accepting it, and adjusted her skirts as if not.
Oh, this ain't good.
If the bond can be changed in one way, she said.
My chair broke.
It should be possible to change it in others. There might be a way to remove the sharing, perhaps some of the awareness. Then perhaps the madness would not be a problem. It would be a different sort of bond, not like the water bond at all. I'm certain.
No, it's just something. Oh fuck.
Any sister could bond whatever number.
Smokers say to each other.
Abruptly, Egwene realized what was happening. Lelaine sat apparently peering into her teacup.
Right, it's a figure of speech.
And using Megan as a stalking horse.
Whoa,
smothering anger, Egwene did not have to make
chair's broken.
It was ice. That sounds exactly like compulsion, Lelaine.
A bolt fell out.
And no twisting of words will.
Well, I got it from
I
got it used,
so. Else who suggests this, and I will order the birch for anyone who does more than suggest. Compulsion is banned, and it will remain banned. As you say, Lillian replied.
I'm not sure how to fix it, but...
meant anything at all. What came next was more pointed. The White Tower makes mistakes upon occasion. It is impossible to live or move without making mistakes. But we live and we go on. And if we sometimes need to conceal our mistakes whenever possible, we rectify them, even when it is painful. Putting her cup back on the tray, she left with Megan at her heels. Megan embraced the source before
Damn, I'm not sure exactly where it broke, but...
For a time, Egwene concentrated on keeping her breathing steady. She performed The River Contained by the Bank.
Right, wanted to break for me. Well, I got it from my neighbor because he was just gonna toss it out.
Very close. At midday, Chesa brought Egwene's meal on another wooden tray. Warm, crusty bread with only one or two suspiciously dark flecks. And
it's a gaming chair,
with slivers of tough
but like one of the arms, like the armrest, is busted off. It still has one, but yeah. Now that bolt came off from somewhere, so I'm not sure from where, but.
Instead of eating, she stared at Tiana's report lying to the side of the table. Nicola might not have gained the shawl in spite of her potential, but the Tower had long experience in taking mule-headed, fault-ridden women and turning them into confident Aes Sedai. Larina had a bright future ahead of her, but
I can read your comment.
The rules before she could begin learning which could be broken.
I just do this.
The White Tower was good at teaching both things, but the first always came first.
Yeah, but it's a gaming chair that my neighbor gave me, a Southsider.
But Aes Sedai, accepted or novice, the Tower required you to do what was needed for the Tower.
Hey, it works, so.
Accepted, novice, or Amerlin.
Most hated is
Chesa was voluble in her disappointment when
he's in his room already.
Tray almost untouched, especially after she had found a practical.
He's got to get up for work in the morning.
Considered claiming an upset stomach.
That's where I'm at, is in my room.
After Chase's tea worked on her headaches, at least for a few days, until they returned fiercer than ever and every night, the plump woman had turned out to have a collection of herbal remedies for every ill, purchased from every peddler with a glib tongue and each bite.
Oh, that's where it came from.
She had a way of looking so downhearted when you would not drink
have an Allen wrench, but let's see if I can just
swallowing them just to keep her from worrying. Sometimes, surprisingly, they worked, but they were never anything Egwene wanted to put in her mouth. She sent Chesa away with the tray and a promise to eat later. No doubt Chesa would present a supper big enough to stuff a goose. She felt like smiling at the thought. Chesa would stand
right, can't complain. And if I just lost this, I'm pretty sure I could just, after the live, find out where it goes and just put it right back.
The White Tower was a strict taskmistress.
It was a lot more comfortable than what I was using.
The Amerlin shall not.
Because I was just using one of those fold-out camping chairs.
She did not know how long she sat.
Which comment?
Piece of paper with one name on it, but when Swan returned, she had made up her mind. A strict taskmistress who never played favorites. Have Lyanna and Boda gone? She asked. At least 2 hours.
Right, just an easy fix.
Lyanna had to deliver Boda and then ride down river.
I just won't be able to lean back for right now.
No. Some people recognized the Amerlin's horse by this time. Too many. There was no time for arguments and explanations. No time to assert her authority and make it stand. Saddle Bella and meet me on the corner 2 streets north. Almost everyone knew Bella, too. Swan's horse, everybody knew. What do you mean to do, Mother? Swan asked worriedly. I mean to take a ride.
Okay, that
and
one.
Swan, tell me
I put it up there just a second ago.
She caught the other woman's eyes, held them with her own. Swan had been Amerlin and able to stare down a stone. Egwene was Amerlin now. Not anyone, Swan. Now go on, go, and hurry. Forehead still creased, Swan hurried. As soon as she was alone, Egwene slid the stole from her neck, folded it carefully, and tucked it into her belt pouch. Her cloak was good wool and stout, but quite plain. Without the stole dangling from her cowls, she could have been anyone. The walkway in front of her study was empty, of course, but once she crossed the frozen street, she made her way through the usual white river of novices, speckled with accepted and the occasional Aes Sedai. The novices bent knees to her without slowing. The accepted offered curtsies as she passed, once they saw that the skirts beneath her cloak were not banded white, and the Aes Sedai glided along with their own faces hidden by
Hell yeah.
If any noticed that she was not
Southsider.
a warder, well, a number
you
of
be able to.
warders, and not everyone was surrounded by the glowing nimbus of Saidar, just most. 2 streets from her study, she stopped at the edge of the wooden walkway, facing away from the stream of hurrying women. She tried not to fret. The sun set halfway down toward the horizon in the west, a golden ball stabbed by the broken peak of Dragon Mount. The mountain's shadow already stretched across the camp, casting the tents in evening dimness. A glass swan appeared, mounted on Bella.
Yeah, but you know you'd be able to. Might be slow at first, but you'll get to it.
Clung to reins and saddle as if she were afraid of falling off. Maybe she was. Swan was one of the worst riders Egwene had ever seen. When she scrambled down from the saddle in a flurry of skirts and muttered curses, she looked relieved to have escaped with her life. Bella whickered at Egwene in recognition. Tugging her disarrayed cowl back into place, Swan opened her mouth too, but Egwene held up a warning hand before the other woman could speak. She could see the word mother forming on Swan's lips, and likely it would have been loud enough to be heard 50 paces off. Tell no one, Egwene said softly. And no notes or hints either. That should cover everything. Keep Chaser company till I get back. I don't want her worried. Swan gave a reluctant nod. Her mouth almost looked sullen. Egwene suspected she had been wise to add notes and hints. Leaving the one-time Amerlin seat looking like a sulky girl, she climbed smoothly into Bella's saddle. She had to walk the stout mare at first because of the frozen ruts in the camp streets, and because everyone would wonder if they saw Swan riding Bella at anything faster than a walk. She tried to ride like Swan, swaying uncertainly, clinging to the saddle's tall pommel with one hand and...
No, I don't. Most hated does.
As if she were about to fall off too.
Most hated was able to find some work, but I haven't been able to find any work yet.
And she knew Egwene rode better than this.
So I'm still stuck here.
And tried not to think about where the sun stood. All the way out of the camp beyond the rows of wagons until the first trees hid her from tents and wagons. Then she bent over the pommel to press her face into Bella's mane. You carried me away from the 2 rivers, she whispered. Can you run as fast now? Straightening, she dug
There we go. Somewhat.
Bella could not gallop like Daishar, but her sturdy legs churned through the snow.
There we go.
She had been a cart horse once,
this had
not a racer or
adjust
a
it a little bit.
She gave what she had, stretching out her neck as bravely as Daishar ever could. Bella raced, and the sun slid slower as if the sky had suddenly become greased.
Well, it's still harder for us because there's plenty of work to find around town. Just that.
But even if she could not beat
we got to find work that
she thumped her heels in time with Bella's hooves.
Willing to pay under the table, because Twilight I can't be put on payroll.
Darkness before Egwene saw the moon glinting on the water of the area.
That's the only bad part.
Still time. It was almost the spot where she had sat Daishar with Gareth, watching the river ships.
But they would be put on payroll. It wouldn't be hard to find a job.
Stillness, and then a muffled curse. The quiet grunts and scrapes of men dragging a heavy burden across the snow and trying for silence. She turned Bella through the trees toward the sound.
Yeah, I know.
Shadows.
I should probably stop messing with it, but
of steel sliding from scabbards. Then a man not far enough under his breath. I know that.
It just keeps bugging that. I want to get down and try to fix it, but I gotta put it off for right now.
No older than the one they say's Amerlin now.
But yeah,
Bella
I'll stop
is not
messing
a
with
pony,
it.
Egwene said crisply. Take me to Boda Cawthon. A dozen men coalesced out of the night shadows among the trees, surrounding her and Bella. They all seemed to think she was Swan, but that was all right. To them, Aes Sedai was Aes Sedai, and they guided her to where Boda was sitting.
Yeah, because I'm on I get a
and holding a dark cloak around her.
Check
Her
every
dress
month
was
that
dark, too.
yeah,
White would
if
have
I
stood
get
out
put on
to me.
payroll, it messes up my check.
Boda recognized Bella,
and I actually
too,
need
and reached
that.
out to scratch the mare's ear fondly when Egwene rode up beside her. You're staying ashore, Egwene said quietly. You can go back with me when it's done.
Because if that was the
Boda
case, I'd
jerked
go
her hand back as if
work
stung
fast
at the
food.
sound of Egwene's
They're
voice.
starting fast food
Why? She said.
employees
Not
off.
quite the man.
At least
She'd
around
learned
here,
that much, at least.
they're starting them off
I
at
can do this.
between
The Aes Sedai explained it to
$16
me.
to
I can do
$20
it.
an hour,
I know you can.
and they
But not
can't
as
get
well as
people
I
to work
can. Not yet.
or stay working,
That seemed too much
which
like
is
a
kind of messed
criticism
up.
that the other woman had
Pay me.
not
I wish
earned.
I was getting paid that much whenever
I am the
I was working fast food.
Some decisions only I can make. And some things I shouldn't ask a novice to do when I can do them better. Perhaps that was not a great deal milder.
Adjust my
But
shirt.
she could not explain about Lorena and Nicola, or the price the White Tower demanded of all its daughters. The Amelin could not explain the one to a novice, and a novice was not ready to learn about the other. Even in the night, the set of Boda's shoulders said she did not understand.
I didn't be able
but
to
she had
find
learned not to argue with
work
Aes
that
Sedai,
pays under the table that
just as she had learned that
ain't gonna
was Aes Sedai. The rest she would learn
ain't gonna
eventually.
put me out of commission
The
for
tower could take all the time it
days
needed
at a
to
time.
Dismounting, Egwene
Right.
handed Bella's
That's
reins
what anything
to one
helps.
of the soldiers and raised her skirts to tramp through the
But
snow.
my body's
toward
at the
the
point where I
labored
can't
sounds
do
of dragging. It was
like
a
hard
large
labor or
rowboat,
stand on my feet for very long because
the snow like a sled.
it
A
puts
bulky
a
sled
number on
that
my
had
back.
to be maneuvered between trees, though with fewer curses once the men doing the pushing
I helped some friends out
she was following them
a
closely.
while back to pull some
Most men guarded their tongues around
do the
Aes
weeds in
Sedai,
the front of their
and if they
business.
could not see her face
I
between
did
the
it.
darkness and her
It
cowl,
didn't take me very
who
long,
else
but
would
since
know
I was
what
hurrying
happened
because
to
it's
her?
about to get dark,
If they knew she was
we
not
did
the same
during
woman intended at first to accompany them,
near the evening to where it wasn't
Aes
that
Sedai?
hot, so I was trying
They
to rush.
eased
I
the
got it
boat
all
into the river,
done,
careful of splashes,
but
and
I was
6
hurting
men
for like
scrambled aboard to
2-3
set oars
days
in
after.
rag-padded oarlocks. The men went
Yeah, that's
barefoot to
mine
avoid
too.
the
I have a
noise of
bad back.
boat
I've had
scraping on the hull planks.
2 surgeries
Smaller
on it,
boats plied these waters,
like
but
5
tonight they had the
5
massive
spinal
approach.
taps,
One of the men
and
on
now
the
I'm
bank gave her
having
a hand to steady herself climbing in,
bad
and she
sciatic
settled on a
nerve
seat in the
problems
bow,
with it now.
holding
So
her cloak close.
my
The
back's
boat
not the
slid away from the bank,
very best
silent
condition.
except for the faint swirl of the oars in the water. Egwene
Then my
looked ahead,
hands are bad.
south toward Tarvalon.
Yes.
The white walls gleamed in the light
I've
of
gotten
a
it
fat
crushed.
rolling
I have metal
moon,
plate in my
and
arm.
high-cut
So
windows
yeah,
gave the city a
my
muted
body's
glow,
broken.
almost as if the island was embracing Saidar. The white tower stood out even.
Well, I got it done in like
windows alight,
a little bit over an hour, and I
moon.
actually had to pull them out by
Something
hand
flashed across the moon, and her breath caught.
and bag them up.
For an instant,
I got
she
it
thought
done
it
in
had
like,
been a Drakkar, an evil
I think it was
Psychon, this
over
of
an
all
hour.
nights. Only
I
a
got it
rat,
done,
she
but
decided.
yeah,
Spring
for like
might be
2-3
near enough for
days,
bats to be
I
venturing
was
out.
hurting. My
Pulling her
back,
cloak tighter,
my
she
legs,
peered
my
toward the
hands.
city, drawing nearer.
I definitely
Nearer.
felt it for like 2-3 days for
As the
like
tall wall of North
between an
Harbor
hour and a
loomed
half
in
to 2
front of
hours
the
worth of
boat,
work of
the
pulling
oarsmen
weeds in.
backed water,
I was
so that
feeling
now
it for
just
days
missed
after.
kissing the wall beside the harbor entrance. Egwene almost put out a hand to fend off
Definitely
from the pale stones
done a lot of
before the boat
abuse
could bump
to
into
my
the
body
wall.
in my younger
That
years.
thump would surely have been heard by the soldiers on guard. The oars made only a small gurgling noise as they swept back, though, and the boat stopped where she could have touched the massive iron chain across the harbor, its huge links giving off their own faint gleam from the grease coating them. There was no need for touching, though, no need for waiting either. Embracing Saidar, she
That's what I liked about when I
aware
worked
of
in
the thrill of life
at the
filling
smoke
her
shop.
before she had the weaves in place. Earth,
I had to deal
fire,
with
and
customers
air
and deal with
surrounding the
people and
chain,
whatnot,
earth
which
and fire touching
ain't
it.
my strong
The black
suit
iron
sometimes.
flashed to white across the
But
whole width
it
of the
wasn't
harbor mouth.
that bad on my back.
She had just time to realize that someone had embraced the source not
Except for
far
when
away
we had to
above
do
her
a
on the wall. Then
dusting
something
and
struck the boat, struck her,
a thorough
and she was
cleaning
aware
on
of cold
everything. But
water enveloping her,
other than that,
filling her nose, her mouth.
it was
Darkness.
it was a hell of a job.
Egwene felt hardness beneath her.
The people
She
that ran the
heard
business,
women's
I
voices, excited
definitely
voices.
appreciate them actually giving me the
Do
job,
you know who this
trusting
is?
me enough for it and whatnot, and
We
paying me
certainly
in
got better
cash.
than we bargained for tonight. Something was
Can't
pressed
beat
to her
that.
mouth and warmth trickled in.
And I can't beat
Mint. She swallowed convulsively.
them
suddenly
putting the
aware of
trust
how
in me
cold she was, shivering. Her eyes
to
flickered
work
open
there
and fastened on the
and
face of
have
the woman holding her head and the cup.
have a key to the front
Lanterns
door
held
and an
by
alarm
soldiers
for
crowding
opening
around
up
gave light enough for
to
her
actually
make out the face
put
clearly.
that much trust in me
An
for that.
ageless face.
That's
She was inside
rarely
North
happened for me, mainly because
the Aes Sedai said encouragingly.
just the way I
Think it all
look,
down. A strong
the way I
vote.
dress, and I
Egwene
guess
tried to push
my
the cup
looks
away,
and
tried to
my
embrace
attitude at
Sidon,
times.
but she could feel herself
But they actually
sliding
trust me
back
enough to
down into darkness.
do that.
They had been waiting
Which
for her.
doesn't come very
She
often
had been
for me.
betrayed. But by whom?
But the best part about it too is the one that's doing that at
Rand stared out of the window.
the smoke shop me and my brother worked at is also our landlord, so
the spine of the world.
that makes it even better.
He thought spring must be coming. Spring always came eventually. Earlier here in Tyr than back home, it should be, though there seemed little sign of it. Lightning forked silver blue across the sky, and long moments passed before the peal of thunder. Distant lightning. The wounds in his side ached, like the herons branded into his palms ached after all this time. Sometimes pain is all that lets you know you're alive, Luce Theron whispered, but Rand ignored the voice in his head. The door creaked open behind him, and he looked over his shoulder at the man who came into the sitting room. Bashir was wearing a short gray silk coat, a rich shimmering coat, and he had the baton of the Marshal General of Saldaia, an ivory rod tipped with a golden wolf's head, tucked behind his belt next to his scabbarded sword. His turned-down boots had been waxed till they shone. Rand tried not to let his relief show. They had been gone long enough. Well, he said. The Shonchan are amenable, Bashir replied. Crazy as loons,
I wish they had a plasma place where I'm at. I'll probably go to that a couple of times.
The Dragon Reborn.
But I don't even have that option because there's
Bashir shook his
nowhere
head.
close by for that.
Apparently a member of their royal family has arrived.
My only means of
the Daughter of the Nine Moons.
transportation's
Thunder rolled again for distant lightning.
Well, if my brother's not here, I'm
we
walking.
rode in the winds of the rising storm. We ran to the sounds of the thunder. We danced among the lightning bolts and tore the world asunder. Anonymous fragment of a poem believed written near the end of the previous age, known by some as the Third Age, sometimes attributed to the Dragon Reborn.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Oh, didn't want that book. Had to start the next book tomorrow. Which one was that one? Give me a sec, everyone. I gotta. Okay, that's 10. I need 11. Which one is that one? Okay, let's see what I put until then. Give me a sec, everyone. I just gotta find a temporary one to throw on for now. Let's throw hell yeah. Southside. It's always good when you get that. The ones actually are your true friends will help you.
Or the richest. Chapter.
Fantasy, sci-fi, horror, like old school horror, like H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe. Newer ones like Coons, King. So it's a variety that I like.
Really depends on two things. How soon could the riders get to Bucklebury? One, a long-expected party. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 111st birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. Bilbo was very rich and very peculiar, and had been the wonder of the Shire for 60 years, ever since his remarkable disappearance and unexpected return. The riches he had brought back from his travels had now become a local legend, and it was popularly believed, whatever the old folk might say, that the hill at Bag End was full of tunnels stuffed with treasure. And if that was not enough for fame, there was also his prolonged vigour to marvel at. Time
Probably had to mute this.
Little effect on Mr. Baggins.
This part of the live,
he was much
because
the same
this
as
book,
50.
but
At 99,
just a temporary one to put the new one on tomorrow.
But unchanged would have been nearer the mark. There were some that shook their heads and thought this was too much of a good thing. It seemed unfair that anyone should possess apparently perpetual youth as well as, reputedly, inexhaustible wealth. "It will have to be paid for," they said. "It isn't natural, and trouble will come of it." But so far trouble had not come. And as Mr. Baggins was generous with his money, most people were willing to forgive him his oddities and his good fortune. He remained on visiting terms with his relatives, except, of course, the Sackville Bagginses, and he had many devoted admirers among the hobbits of poor and unimportant families. But he had no close friends until some of his younger cousins began to grow up. The eldest of these, and Bilbo's favourite, was young Frodo Baggins. When Bilbo was 99, he adopted Frodo as his heir, and brought him to live at Bag End, and the hopes of the Sackville Bagginses were finally dashed. Bilbo and Frodo happened to have the same birthday, September the 22nd. "You had better come and live here, Frodo, my lad," said Bilbo one day, "and then we can celebrate our birthday parties comfortably together." At that time, Frodo was still in his tweens, as the hobbits called the irresponsible 20s between childhood and coming of age at 33. 12 more years passed. Each year, the Bagginses had given very lively combined birthday parties at Bag End, but now it was understood that something quite exceptional was being planned for that autumn. Bilbo was going to be 11-1. 111, a rather curious number and a very respectable age for a hobbit. The old Took himself had only reached 130. And Frodo was going to be 33, 3-3, an important number, the date of his coming of age. Tongues began to wag in Hobbiton and Bywater, and the rumour of the coming event travelled all over the Shire. The history and character of Mr. Bilbo Baggins became once again the chief topic of conversation, and the older folks suddenly found their reminiscences in welcome demand. No one had a more attentive audience than old Ham Gamgee, commonly known as the Gaffer. He held forth at the Ivy Bush, a small inn on the Bywater Road, and he spoke with some authority, for he had tended the garden at Bag End for 40 years, and had helped old Holman in the same job before that. Now that he was himself growing old and stiff in the joints, the job was mainly carried on by his youngest son, Sam Gamgee. Both father and son were on very friendly terms with Bilbo and Frodo. They lived on the hill itself, in number 3 Bagshot Row, just below Bag End. "A very nice, well-spoken, gentle hobbit is Mr. Bilbo, as I've always said," the Gaffer declared.
Hell yes, outsider.
For
We
Bilbo
definitely
was very
appreciate
polite
you
to
stopping
him,
by.
calling him Master Hamfast.
Hope you have a good
Consulting
rest of your
him
evening,
constantly
too.
on the growing of vegetables. In the matter of roots, especially potatoes, the Gaffer was recognized as the leading authority by all in the neighborhood, including himself. "But what about this Frodo that lives with him?" asked old Noakes of Bywater. "Baggins is his name, but he's more than half a brandy-buck, they say. It beats me why any Baggins of Hobbiton should go looking for a wife away there in Buckland, where folks are so queer." "And no wonder they're queer," put in Daddy Twofoot, the Gaffer's next-door neighbour. "If they live on the wrong side of the Red
Hell yeah,
River,
definitely appreciate
and right
it, too.
in the old
Always
forest,
appreciate
it's
it.
a bad place if half the tales be true." "You're right, Dad," said the Gaffer. "Not that the brandy bucks of Buckland live in the forest, but they're a queer breed, seemingly.
Oh yeah.
They fool about with boats on that big river, and that isn't natural. Small wonder that trouble came of it, I say. But be that as it may, Mr. Frodo is as nice a young hobbit as you could wish to meet. Very much like Mr. Bilbo, and in more than looks. After all, his father was a Baggins. A decent, respectable hobbit was Mr. Drogo Baggins. There was never much to tell of him, till he was drowned." "Drowned?" said several voices. They had heard this and other darker rumours before, of course, but hobbits have a passion for family history, and they were ready to hear it again. Well, so they say, said the gaffer. You see, Mr. Drogo, he married poor Miss Primula Brandybuck. She was our Mr. Bilbo's first cousin on the mother's side, her mother being the youngest of the old Took's daughters, and Mr. Drogo was his second cousin. So Mr. Frodo is his first and second cousin, once removed either way, as the saying is, if you follow me. And Mr. Drogo was staying at Brandy Hall with his father-in-law, old Master Gorbadoc, as he often did after his marriage, him being partial to his victuals, and old Gorbadoc keeping a mighty generous table. And he went out boating on the Brandywine River, and he and his wife were drowned, and poor Mr. Frodo only a child and all. I've heard they went on the water after dinner in the moonlight, said old Nooks, and it was Drogo's weight as sunk the boat. And I heard she pushed him in, and he pulled her in after him, said Sandyman the Hobbiton Miller. You shouldn't listen to all you hear, Sandyman, said the gaffer, who did not much like the miller. There isn't no call to go talking of pushing and pulling. Boats are quite tricky enough for those that sit still without looking further for the cause of trouble. Anyway, there was this Mr. Frodo left an orphan and stranded, as you might say, among those queer Bucklanders, being brought up anyhow in Brandy Hall. A regular warren by all accounts. Old Master Gorbadoc never had fewer than a couple of 100 relations in the place. Mr. Bilbo never did a kinder deed than when he brought the lad back to live among decent folk. And I reckon it was a nasty knock for those Sackville Bagginses. They thought they were going to get Bag End that time when he went off and was thought to be dead. And then he comes back and orders them off, and he goes on living and living and never looking at day.
Hey, Christopher, how you doing, bro? Hope you're doing well.
And as all the
Good to
papers
see you.
made out proper. The Sackville Bagginses won't never see the inside of Bag End now, or it is to be hoped not. There's a tiny bit of money tucked away up there, I hear tell, said a stranger, a visitor on business from Mickle Delving and the Westfarthing. All the top of your hill is full of tunnels packed with chests of gold and silver and jewels, by what I've heard. Then you've heard more than I can speak to, answered the gaffer. I know nothing about jewels. Mr. Bilbo is free with his money, and there seems no lack of it. But I know of no tunnel making. I saw Mr. Bilbo when he came back, a matter of 60 years ago, when I was a lad. I'd not long come apprentice to old Holman, him being my dad's cousin. But he had me up at Bag End helping him to keep folks from trampling and traipsing all over the garden.
Bravo, Chris. J'espère que tu vas bien.
All over the garden while the sale was on. And in the middle of it all, Mr. Bilbo comes up the hill with a pony and some mighty big bags and a couple of chests. I don't doubt they
It's
were
definitely good
full
to
of
see you,
treasure
Chris.
picked up in foreign parts, where there be mountains of gold, they say. But there wasn't enough to fill tunnels. But my lad Sam will know more about that. He's in and out of Bag End. Crazy about stories of the old days he is. And he listens to all Mr. Bilbo's tales. Mr. Bilbo has learned him his letters, meaning no harm, mark you, and I hope no harm will come of it. Elves and dragons, I says to him, cabbages and potatoes are better for me and you. Don't go getting mixed up in the business of your betters, or you'll land in trouble too big for you, I says to him. And I might say it to others, he added with a look at the stranger and the miller. But the gaffer didn't convince his audience. The legend of Bilbo's wealth was now too firmly fixed in the minds of the younger generation of hobbits. Ah, but but he has likely enough been adding to what he brought at first, argued the miller, voicing common opinion. He's often away from home, and look at the outlandish folk that visit him. Dwarves coming at night, and that old wandering creature of Gandalf and all. You can say what you like, Ever, but Bag End's a queer place, and its folk are queerer. And you can say what you like about what you know no more of than you do of boating, Mr. Sandyman, retorted the gaffer, disliking the miller even more than usual. If that's being queer, then we could do with a bit more queerness in these parts. There's some not far away that wouldn't offer a pint of beer to a friend if they lived in a hole with golden walls. But they do things proper at Bag End. Our Sam says that everyone's going to be invited to the party, and there's going to be presents, mark you, presents for all, this very month.
There you go. Hate when it turns.
That very month was September,
There you go.
and as fine as you could ask. A day or two
Not
later,
picking my nose, I swear,
probably
just
started by the
so I
knowledgeable
stepped
Sam,
them.
was spread about that there were going to be fireworks. Fireworks, what is more, such as had not been seen in the Shire for nigh on a century. Not indeed since the old Took died. Days passed, and the day grew nearer. An odd-looking wagon laden with odd-looking packages rolled into Hobbiton one evening and toiled up the hill to Bag End. The startled hobbits peered out of lamplit doors to gape at it. It was driven by outlandish folk, singing strange songs, dwarves with long beards and deep hoods. A few of them remained at Bag End. At the end of the second week in September, a cart came in through Bywater from the direction of Brandywine Bridge in broad daylight. An old man was driving it all alone. He wore a tall, pointed blue hat, a long grey cloak, and a silver scarf. He had a long white beard and bushy eyebrows that stuck out beyond the brim of his hat. Small hobbit children ran after the cart all through Hobbiton and right up the hill. It had a cargo of fireworks, as they rightly guessed. At Bilbo's front door, the old man began to unload. There were great bundles of fireworks of all sorts and shapes, each labelled with a large red Fëanorian G and the Elfrune G. That was Gandalf's mark, of course. And the old man was Gandalf the Wizard. His fame in the Shire was due mainly to his skill with fires, smokes, and lights. His real business was far more difficult and dangerous, but the Shire folk knew nothing about it. For them, he was just one of the attractions of the party. Hence the excitement of the hobbit children. "Chief and Grand!" they shouted, and the old man smiled. They knew him by sight, though he only appeared in Hobbiton occasionally, and never stopped long. But neither they nor any but the oldest of their elders had seen one of his firework displays. They now belonged to a legendary past. When the old man, helped by Bilbo and some dwarves, had finished unloading, Bilbo gave a few pennies away, but not a single squib or cracker was forthcoming, to the disappointment of the onlookers. "Run away now," said Gandalf. "You will get plenty when the time comes." Then he disappeared inside with Bilbo, and the door was shut. The young hobbit stared at the door in vain for a while, and then made off, feeling that the day of the party would never come. Inside Bag End, Bilbo and Gandalf were sitting at the open window of a small room looking out west onto the garden.
Had me a
The
couple.
late afternoon was bright and peaceful. The flowers glowed red and golden, snapdragons and sunflowers, and nasturtiums trailing all over the turf walls and peeping in at the round windows. "How bright your garden looks," said Gandalf. "Yes," said Bilbo. "I am very fond indeed of it, and of all the dear old Shire, but I think I need a holiday." "You mean to go on with your plan, then?" "I do. I made up my mind months ago, and I haven't changed it." "Very well. It is no good saying any more. Stick to your plan, your whole plan, mind. And I hope it will turn out for the best, for you and for all of us. I hope so. Anyway, I mean to enjoy myself on Thursday. And
they both hold 2 grams, so
we'll laugh, I wonder.
this one I've been working on for a little bit.
Head. We shall see, said Bilbo. The next day, more carts rolled up the hill, and still more carts. There might have been some grumbling about dealing locally, but that very week orders began to pour out of Bag End for every kind of provision, commodity, or luxury that could be obtained in Hobbiton or Bywater or anywhere in the neighbourhood. People became enthusiastic, and they began to tick off the days on the calendar, and they watched eagerly for the postman, hoping for invitations. Before long, the invitations began pouring out, and the Hobbiton post office was blocked, and the Bywater post office was snowed under, and the voluntary assistant postmen were called for. There was a constant stream of them going up the hill, carrying hundreds of polite variations on, "Thank you, I shall certainly come." A notice appeared on the gate at Bag End, "No admittance except on party business." Even those who had, or pretended to have party business, were seldom allowed inside. Bilbo was busy, writing invitations, ticking off answers, packing up presents, and making some private preparations of his own. From the time of Gandalf's arrival, he remained hidden from view. One morning, the hobbits woke to find the large field, south of Bilbo's front door, covered with ropes and poles for tents and pavilions. A special entrance was cut into the bank leading to the road, and wide steps and a large white gate were built there. The 3 hobbit families of Bagshot Row, adjoining the field, were intensely interested and generally envied. Old Gaffer Gamgee stopped even pretending to work in his garden. The tents began to go up. There was a specially large pavilion, so big that the tree that grew in the field was right inside it, and stood proudly near one at the head of the table. Lanterns were hung on all its branches. More promising still, to the hobbit's mind, an enormous open-air kitchen was erected in the north corner of the field. A draft of cooks from every inn and eating house for miles around arrived to supplement the dwarves and other odd folk that were quartered at Bag End. Excitement rose to its height. Then the weather clouded over. That was on Wednesday, the eve of the party. Anxiety was intense. Then Thursday, September the 22nd, actually dawned. The sun got up, the clouds vanished, flags were unfurled, and the fun began. Bilbo Baggins called it a party, but it was really a variety of entertainments rolled into one. Practically everybody living near was invited. A very few were overlooked by accident, but as they turned up all the same, that didn't matter. Many people from other parts of the Shire were also asked, and there were even a few from outside the borders. Bilbo met the guests and additions at the new White Gate in person. He gave away presents to all and sundry. The latter were those who went out again by a back way and came in again by the gate. Hobbits give presents to other people on their own birthdays. Not very expensive ones, as a rule, and not so lavishly as on this occasion, but it was not a bad system. Actually, in Hobbiton and Bywater, every day in the year was somebody's birthday, so that every hobbit in those parts had a fair chance of at least one present at least once a week. But they never got tired of them. On this occasion, the presents were unusually good. The hobbit children were so excited that for a while they almost forgot about eating. There were toys the like of which they had never seen before, all beautiful and some obviously magical. Many of them had indeed been ordered a year before, and had come all the way from the mountain and from Dale, and were a real dwarf make. When every guest had been welcomed, and was finally inside the gate, There were songs, dances, music, games, and, of course, food and drink. There were 3 official meals: lunch, tea, and dinner, or supper. But lunch and tea were marked chiefly by the fact that at those times all the guests were sitting down and eating together. At other times there were merely lots of people eating and drinking, continuously from 11s until 6:30, when the fireworks started. The fireworks were by Gandalf. They were not only brought by him, but designed and made by him, and the special effects, set pieces, and flights of rockets were let off by him. But there was also a generous distribution of squibs, crackers, baccarattas, sparklers, torches, dwarf candles, elf fountains, goblin barkers, and thunderclaps. They were all superb. The art of Gandalf improved with age. There were rockets like a flight of scintillating birds singing with sweet voices. There were green trees with trunks of dark smoke. Their leaves opened like a whole spring unfolding in a moment, and their shining branches like glowing flowers down upon the
I could get, well, this is a 2 grammer.
with a sweet scent just
It's
before they touched their
THC.
upturned faces.
I could get hold of them for about $30 a piece.
There were pillars of colored fires that rose and turned into eagles or sailing ships, or a
So it's not bad.
There was a red thunderstorm and a shower of yellow rain.
And they last a little bit depending on how often you hit it.
Suddenly into the air with a yell
like this one I've had for,
and it came down again into the water
for a little bit,
like
and
100 hot snakes. And there was also one last surprise in honor of Bilbo, and it startled the hobbits exceedingly. As
less than half, about a quarter of it left.
The lights went out. A great smoke went up. It shaped itself like a mountain seen in the distance and began to glow at the summit. It spouted green and scarlet flames. Out flew a red golden dragon, not life-size, but terribly lifelike. Fire came from his jaws. His eyes glared down. There was a roar, and he whizzed 3 times over the heads of the crowd. They all ducked, and many fell flat on their faces. The dragon passed like an express train, turned a somersault, and burst over Bywater with a deafening explosion. "That is the signal for supper," said Bilbo. The pain and alarm vanished at once, and the prostrate hobbits leapt to their feet. There was a splendid supper for everyone. For everyone, that is, except those invited to the special family dinner party. This was held in the great pavilion with the tree. The invitations were limited to 12 dozen, a number also called by the hobbits 1 gross, though the word was not considered proper to use of people. And the guests were selected from all the families to which Bilbo and Frodo were related, with the addition of a few special unrelated friends, such as Gandalf. Many young hobbits were included, and present by parental permission, for hobbits were easygoing with their children in the matter of sitting up late, especially when there was a chance of getting them a free meal. Bringing up young hobbits took a lot of provender. There were many Bagginses and Boffins, and also many Toops and Brandybucks. There were various Grubbs, relations of Bilbo Baggins' grandmother, and various Chubs, connections of his Toop grandfather, and a selection of Burrowses, Bolgers, Bracegirdles, Brockhouses, Goodbodies, Hornblowers, and Proudfoots. Some of these were only very distantly connected with Bilbo, and some had hardly ever been in Hobbiton before, as they lived in remote corners of the Shire. The Sackville Bagginses were not forgotten. Also, as his wife Lobelia were present, they disliked Bilbo and detested Frodo, but so magnificent was the invitation card, written in golden ink, that they had felt it was impossible to refuse. Besides, their cousin, Bilbo, had been specializing in food for many years, and his table had a high reputation.
Oh, shit.
All the 144 guests expected a pleasant feast, though they rather dreaded the after-dinner speech of their host, an inevitable item. He was liable to drag in bits of what he called poetry. And
they tend to, depending where you get them, they can be expensive.
Would allude to the absurd adventures of his mysterious journey. The guests were not disappointed. They had a very pleasant feast. In fact, an engrossing entertainment. Rich, abundant, varied, and prolonged. The purchase of provisions fell almost to nothing throughout the district in the ensuing weeks.
How much would that translate to
stocks of most of the stores,
US dollars?
And warehouses for miles around? That didn't matter much. After the feast, more or less, came the speech. Most of the company were, however, now in a tolerant mood, at that delightful stage which they called filling up the corners. They were sipping their favourite drinks and nibbling at their favourite dainties, and their fears were forgotten. They were prepared to listen to anything and to cheer at every full stop.
Now my back's starting to hurt. I can't lean back in my chair because it's broken.
Began Bilbo, rising in his place. Here, 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 they shouted, and kept on repeating it in chorus, seeming reluctant to follow their own advice. Bilbo left his place and went and stood on a chair under the illuminated tree. The light of the lanterns fell on his beaming face. The golden buttons shone on his embroidered silk waistcoat. They could all see him standing, waving one hand in the air. The other was in his trouser pocket. My dear Bagginses and Boffins, he began again, and my dear Tooks and Brandybucks and Grubs and Chubs and Barrowses and Hornblowers and Bulgers, Bracegirdles, Goodbodies, Brockhouses, and Proudfoots. Proud feet, shouted an elderly hobbit from the back of the pavilion. His name, of course, was Proudfoot, and well merited. His feet were large, exceptionally furry, and both were on the table. Proudfoots, repeated Bilbo. Also my good Sackville Bagginses, that I welcome back at last to Baggage. Today is my 111th birthday. I am 11 today. Hooray! Hooray! Many happy returns, they shouted, and they hammered joyously on the tables. Bilbo was doing splendidly. This was the sort of stuff they liked, short and obvious. I hope you're all enjoying yourselves as much as I am. Deafening cheers, cries of yes and no, noises of trumpets and horns, pipes and flutes, and other musical instruments. There were, as has been said, many young hobbits present. Hundreds of musical crackers had been pulled. Most of them bore the mark Dale on them, which did not convey much to most of the hobbits, but they all agreed they were marvelous crackers. They contained instruments, small, but of perfect make and enchanting tones. Indeed, in one corner, some of the young Tooks and Brandybucks, supposing Uncle Bilbo to have finished, since he had plainly said all that was necessary, now got up an impromptu orchestra and began a merry dance tune. Master Everard Took and Miss Melilot Brandybuck got on a table and with bells in their hands began to dance the Springle Ring, a pretty dance, but rather vigorous. But Bilbo had not finished. Seizing a horn from a youngster nearby, he blew 3 loud hoots. The noise subsided. I shall not keep you long, he cried. Cheers from all the assembly. I have called you all together for a purpose. Something in the way that he said this made an impression. There was almost silence, and 1 or 2 of the Tooks pricked up their ears. Indeed, for 3 purposes. First of all, to tell you that I am immensely fond of you all, and that 11 years is too short a time to live among such excellent and admirable hobbits. Tremendous outburst of approval. I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. This was unexpected and rather difficult. There was some scattered clapping, but most of them were trying to work it out and see if it came to a compliment. Secondly, to celebrate my birthday. Cheers again. I should say our birthday, for it is, of course, also the birthday of my heir and nephew, Frodo. He comes of age and into his inheritance today. Some perfunctory clapping by the elders, and some loud shouts of Frodo, Frodo, jolly old Frodo from the juniors. The Sackville Baggins scowled and wondered what was meant by coming into his inheritance. Together we score 144.
Je ne reçois pas le mien en magasin, je le trouve ailleurs.
Oh, your numbers were chosen to fit this remarkable total. One gross, if I may use the expression. No cheers. This was ridiculous. Many of the guests, and especially the Sackville Bagginses, were insulted, feeling sure they had only been asked to fill up the required number like goods in a package. One gross indeed. Vulgar expression. It is also, if I may be allowed to refer to ancient history, the anniversary of my arrival by barrel at Esgaroth on the Long Lake, though the fact that it was my birthday slipped my memory on that occasion. I was only 51 then, and birthdays didn't seem so important. The banquet was very splendid, however, though I had a bad cold at the time, I remember, and could only say, "Thank you very much." I now repeat it more correctly. Thank you very much for coming to my little party. Obstinate silence. They all feared that a song or some poetry was now imminent, and they were getting bored. Why couldn't he stop talking and let them drink his health? But Bilbo did not sink or recite. He paused for a moment. Thirdly and finally, he said, I wish to make an announcement. He spoke this last word so loudly and suddenly that everyone sat up who still could. I regret to announce that, though, as I said, 11 years is far too short a time to spend among you, this is the end. I am going. I am leaving now. Goodbye. He stepped down and vanished. There was a blinding flash of light, and the guests all blinked. When they opened their eyes, Bilbo was nowhere to be seen. 144 flabbergasted hobbits sat back speechless. Old Odo Proudfoot removed his feet from the table and stamped. Then there was a dead silence, until suddenly, after several deep breaths, every Baggins, Boffin, Took, Brandybuck, Grubb, Chubb, Burrows, Bolger, Bracegirdle, Brockhouse, Goodbody, Hornblower, and Proudfoot began to talk at once. It was general. The joke was in very bad taste. Food and drink were needed to cure the guests of shock and annoyance. He's mad, I always said so, was probably the most popular comment. Even the Tooks, with a few exceptions, thought Bilbo's behavior was absurd. For the moment, most of them took it for granted that his disappearance was nothing more than a ridiculous prank. But old Rory Brandybuck was not so sure. Neither age nor an enormous dinner had clouded his wits, and he said to his daughter-in-law, Esmeralda, There's something fishy in this, my dear. I believe that mad Baggins is off again. Silly old fool. Don't worry. He hasn't taken a boat with him. He called loudly to Frodo to send the wine.
No, we're going to hit off that one.
Frodo was the only one present who had said nothing. For some time he had sat silently beside Bilbo's empty chair and ignored all remarks and questions. He had enjoyed the joke, of course, even though he had been in the know. He had difficulty in keeping from laughter at the indignant surprise of the guests, but at the same time he felt deeply troubled. He realized suddenly that he loved the old hobbit dearly. Most of the guests went on eating and drinking and discussing Bilbo Baggins's oddities, past and present, but the Sackville Bagginses had already departed in wrath. Frodo didn't want to have any more to do with the party. He gave orders for more wine to be served. Then he got up and drained his own glass silently to the health of Bilbo and slipped out of the pavilion. As for Bilbo Baggins, even while he was making his speech, he had been fingering the golden ring in his pocket, his magic ring that he had kept secret for so many years. As he stepped down, he slipped it on his finger, and he was never seen by any hobbit in Hobbiton again. He walked briskly back to his hole and stood for a moment listening with a smile to the din in the pavilion and to the sounds of merrymaking in other parts of the field. Then he went in. He took off his party clothes, folded up and wrapped in tissue paper his embroidered silk waistcoat, and put it away. Then he put on quickly some old untidy garments and fastened round his waist a worn leather belt. On it he hung a short sword in a battered black leather scabbard. From a locked drawer, smelling of mothballs, he took out an old cloak and hood. They had been locked up as if they were very precious, but they were so patched and weather-stained that
Christopher.
could hardly be guessed.
Me and my brother already got some outside now. It's already good enough weather for us to do it.
He then went into his study.
Because, yesterday we were in the 90s.
And also a large, bulky envelope. The book and bundle he stuffed into the top of a heavy bag that was standing there, already nearly full. Into the envelope he slipped his golden ring and its fine chain, and then sealed it and addressed it to Frodo. At first he put it on the mantelpiece, but suddenly he removed it and stuck it in his pocket. At that moment the door opened and Gandalf came quickly in. "Hello," said Bilbo. "I wondered if you'd turn up." "I'm glad to find you visible," replied the wizard, sitting down in a chair. "I wanted to catch you and have a few final words. I suppose you feel that everything has gone off splendidly and according to plan." "Yes, I do," said Bilbo. "Though that flash was surprising. It quite startled me, let alone the others. A little addition of your own, I suppose." "It was. You have wisely kept that dream secret all these years, and it seemed to me necessary to give your guests something else that would seem to
That's
explain
crazy.
sudden vanishment."
I'm not sure when we got rain last. It's been a little bit.
"You are an interfering old busybody," laughed Bilbo. "But I expect you know best as usual." "I do, when I know anything."
Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
I don't feel too sure about this whole affair. It has now come to the final point. You have had your joke and alarmed or offended most of your relations, and given the whole Shire something to talk about for 9 days, or 99 more likely. Are you going any further? "Yes, I am. I feel I need a holiday, a very long holiday, as I've told you before. Probably a permanent holiday. I don't expect I shall return. In fact, I don't mean to, and I have made all arrangements. I am old, Gandalf. I don't look it, but I'm beginning to feel it in my heart of hearts. Well preserved indeed," he snorted. "Why, I feel all thin, sort of stretched, if you know what I mean. Like butter that has been scraped over too much bread. That can't be right. I need a change or something." Gandalf looked curiously and closely at him. "No, it does not seem right," he said thoughtfully. "No, after all, I believe your plan is probably the best." "Well, I've made up my mind anyway. I want to see mountains again, Gandalf, mountains. And then find somewhere where I can rest, in peace and quiet, without a lot of relatives prying around, the string of confounded visitors hanging on the bell. I might find somewhere where I can finish my book. I have thought of a nice ending for it. And he lived happily ever after to the end of his days." Gandalf laughed. "I hope he will. But nobody will read the book, however it ends. Oh, they may in years to come. Frodo has read some already, as far as it has gone. You'll keep an eye on Frodo, won't you? Yes, I will. 2 eyes, as often as I can spare them. He would come with me,
Birds?
of course, if I
No.
asked him. In fact, he offered to once.
I have dogs in my house, but
he doesn't really want
not
to
birds.
yet. I want to see the wide country again before I die. In the mountains. But he's still in love with the Shire, with wood and fields and little rivers. He ought to be comfortable here. I'm leaving everything to him, of course, except a few
See, there's one dog.
He'll be happy when he gets
The other
used
one
to
is
being on his own.
right
It's
there.
time it was his own master now. Everything, said Gandalf. The ring as well. You agreed to that, you remember? Well, yes, I suppose so, stammered Bilbo. Where is it? In an envelope, if you must know, said Bilbo impatiently. There, on the mantelpiece. Well, no, here it is in the pocket. He hesitated. Isn't that odd now? He said softly to himself. Yet, after all, why not? Why shouldn't it stay there? Gandalf looked again very hard at Bilbo, and there was a gleam in his eyes. I think, Bilbo, he said quietly, I should leave it behind. Don't you want to? Well, yes. No.
That's my two that my brother has too. Also has almost like I do. Has a bigger one and a little one.
Why do you want me to? He asked, and a curious change came over his voice. It was sharp with suspicion and annoyance. You were always badgering me.
Oh yeah, I definitely see how you're sleeping right now.
The other things that I got on my journey. No, but I had to badger you, said Gandalf. I wanted the truth. It was important. Magic rings are, well, magical. They're rare and curious. I was professionally interested in your ring, you may say, and I still am. I should like to know where it is if you go wandering again. Also, I think you have had it quite long enough. You won't need it anymore, Bilbo, unless I'm quite mistaken. Bilbo flushed, and there was an angry light in his eyes. His kindly face grew hard. Why not? He cried. And what business is it of yours, anyway, to know what I do with my own things? It is my own. I found it. It came to me. Yes, yes, said Gandalf. But there is no need to get angry. If I am, it is your fault, said Bilbo. It is mine, I tell you. My own. My precious. Yes, my precious. The wizard's face.
Hey, Boogie, how you doing?
And only a flicker in his deep eyes showed that he was startled and indeed alarmed. It has been called that before, he said, but not by you. But I say it now, and why not? Even if Gollum said the
How's
same
your
once.
evening going, bro?
It's not his now, but mine.
Hope you're doing good.
Keep it, I said. Gandalf stood up. He spoke sternly. You would be a fool if you do, Bilbo, he said. You make that clearer with every word you say. It has got far too much hold on you. Let it go, and then you can go yourself and be free. I'll do as I choose and go as I please, said Bilbo obstinately. Now, my dear hobbit, said Gandalf. All your life we have been friends, and you owe me something. Come, do as you promised. Give it up.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if you want my ring yourself, say so, cried Bilbo. But you won't get it. I won't give my precious away, I tell you. His hand straight to the hilt of his small sword. Gandalf's eyes flashed. It will be my turn to get angry soon, he said. If you say that again, I shall. Then you will see Gandalf the Grey uncloaked. He took a step toward the hobbit.
Yeah.
He seemed to grow tall and menacing. His shadow filled the room. Bilbo backed away to the wall, breathing hard, his hand clutching at his pocket. They stood for a while facing one another, and the air of the room tingled. Gandalf's eyes remained bent on the hobbit. Slowly his hands relaxed, and he began to tremble. I don't know what has come over you, Gandalf, he said. You've never been like this before. What's it all about? It is mine, isn't it? I found it, and Gollum would have killed me if I hadn't kept it. I'm not a thief, whatever he said. I've never called you one, Gandalf answered. And I'm not one either. I'm not trying to rob you, but to help you. I wish you'd trust me as you used. He turned away and the shadow passed. He seemed to dwindle again to an old grey man, bent and troubled. Bilbo drew his hand over his eyes. I am sorry, he said, but I felt so queer. And yet it would be a relief in a way not to be bothered with it anymore. It has been so growing on my mind lately. Sometimes I have felt it was like an eye looking at me. I'm always wanting to put it on and disappear, don't you know? Or wondering if it's safe and pulling it out to make sure. I tried locking it up, but I found I couldn't rest without it in my pocket. I don't know why, and I don't seem able to make up my mind. Then trust mine, said Gandalf. It's quite made up. Go away and leave it behind. Stop possessing it. Give it to Frodo, and I will look after him. Bilbo stood for a moment, tense and undecided. Presently he sighed. All right, he said with an effort. I will. Then he shrugged his shoulders and smiled rather ruefully. After all, that's what this party business was all about, really. To give away lots of birthday presents and somehow make it easier to give it away at the same time. It hasn't made it any easier in the end, but it would be a pity to waste all my preparations. It would quite spoil the joke. Indeed, it would take away the only point I ever saw in the affair, said Gandalf. Very well, said Bilbo. It goes to Frodo with all the rest. He drew a deep breath. But now I really must be starting, or somebody else will catch me. I've said goodbye, and I couldn't bear to do it all over again. He picked up his bag and moved to the door. You have still got the ring in your pocket, said the wizard. Well, so I have, cried Bilbo. And my will and all the other documents, too. You'd better take it and deliver it for me. That will be safest. No, don't give the ring to me, said Gandalf. Put it on the mantelpiece. It will be safe enough there till Frodo comes. I shall wait for him. Bilbo took out the envelope, but just as he was about to set it by the clock, his hand jerked back and the packet fell on the floor. Before he could pick it up, the wizard stooped and seized it and set it in its place. A spasm of anger passed swiftly over the hobbit's face again. Suddenly, it gave way to a look of relief and a laugh. Well, that's that, he said. Now I'm off. They went out into the hall. Bilbo chose his favorite stick from the stand. Then he whistled. 3 dwarves came out of different rooms where they had been busy. Is everything ready? Asked Bilbo. Everything packed and labeled? Everything, they answered. Well, let's start then. He stepped out of the front door. It was a fine night, and the black sky was dotted with stars. He looked up, sniffing the air. What fun! What fun to be off again, off on the road with dwarves. This is what I've really been longing for years. Goodbye, he said, looking at his old home and bowing to the door. Goodbye, Gandalf. Goodbye for the present, Bilbo. Take care of yourself. You're old enough and perhaps wise enough. Take care. I don't care. Don't you worry about me. I'm as happy now as I've ever been. And that is saying a great deal. But the time has come. I'm being swept off my feet at last, he added. And then in a low voice, as if to himself, he sang softly in the dark. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can. Pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say. He paused, silent for a moment. Then, without another word, he turned away from the lights and voices in the fields and tents, and followed by his three companions, went round into his garden, and trotted down the long
that would
he jumped over a low
that would
basin
get old
at the
after a
bottom
while.
and took to the meadows, passing into the night like a rustle of wind in the grass. Gandalf remained for a while, staring after him into the darkness. "Goodbye, my dear Bilbo, until our next
Humidity would suck.
he said softly, and went back indoors. Frodo came in soon afterwards, and found him sitting in the dark, deep in thought. "Has he gone?" he asked. "Yes," answered Gandalf. "He's gone at last." I hoped until this evening that it was only a joke," said Frodo. "But I knew in my heart that he really meant to go. He always used to joke about serious things. I wish I'd come back sooner, just to see him off." "I think really he preferred slipping off quietly in the end," said Gandalf. "Don't be too troubled. He'll be all right now. He left a packet for you. There it is." Frodo took the envelope from the mantelpiece and glanced at it, but did not open it. "You'll find his will and all the other documents in there, I think," said the wizard. "You are the master of Bag End now, and also, I fancy, you'll find the golden ring." "The ring!" exclaimed Frodo. "Has he left me that? I wonder why. Still, it may be useful." "It may, and it may not," said Gandalf. "I should not make use of it if I were you. But keep it secret, and keep it safe. Now I'm going to bed." As master of Bag End, Frodo felt it his painful duty to say goodbye to the guests. Rumours of strange events had by now spread all over the field, but Frodo would only say, "No doubt everything will be cleared up in the morning." About midnight, carriages came for the important folk. One by one they rolled away, filled with full but very unsatisfied hobbits. Gardeners came by arrangement, and removed in wheelbarrows those that had inadvertently remained behind. Night slowly passed. The sun rose. The hobbits rose rather later. Morning went on. People came and began, by orders, to clear away the pavilions and the tables and the chairs, and the spoons and knives and bottles and plates, and the lanterns, and the flowering shrubs in boxes, and the crumbs and cracker paper, the forgotten bags and gloves and handkerchiefs, and the uneaten food, a very small item. Then a number of other people came, without orders. Bagginses and Boffins and Bulgers and Tooks, and other guests that lived or were staying near. By midday, when
no, I
even the
don't.
bed were out and about again,
I don't
there
think
was
I
a
do.
large crowd at Bag End, uninvited but not unexpected. Frodo was waiting on the step, smiling, but looking rather tired and worried. He welcomed all the callers, but he hadn't much more to say than before. His reply to all enquiries was simply this: "Mr. Bilbo Baggins has gone away, as far as I know, for good." Some of the visitors he invited to come inside, as Bilbo had left messages for them. Inside in the hall there was piled a large assortment of packages and parcels and small articles of furniture. On every item there was a label tied. There were several labels of this sort: "For Adelard Took," "For his very own,"
Oh, yeah.
from Bilbo. on an umbrella.
I have to look them up,
Abelard
see what
had
they
carried
look
off
like.
many unlabeled ones. For Dora Baggins, in memory of a long correspondence with love from Bilbo on a large waste paper basket. Dora was Drogo's sister and eldest surviving female relative of Bilbo and Frodo. She was 99 and had written reams of good advice for more than half a century. For Milo Burrows, hoping it would be useful, from BB, on a gold pen and ink bottle. Milo never answered letters. For Angelica's use, from Uncle Bilbo, on a round convex mirror. She was a young Baggins, and too obviously considered her face shapely. For the collection of Hugo Bracegirdle, from a contributor, on an empty bookcase. Hugo was a great borrower of books, and worse than usual at returning them. For Lobelia Sackville Baggins, as a present, on a case of silver spoons. Bilbo believed that she had acquired a good many of his spoons while he was away on his former journey.
Oh, wow.
Lobelia knew that quite well. When she arrived later in the day,
Those are nice
she took
birds.
the point at once, but she also took the spoons. This is only a small selection of the assembled presents. Bilbo's residence had got rather cluttered
some
up with
pretty
things in the
birds,
course of
Chris.
his long life. It was a tendency of hobbit holes to get cluttered up, for which the custom of giving so many birthday presents was largely responsible. Not, of course, that the birthday presents were always new. There were one or two old mathams of forgotten uses that had circulated all round the district, but Bilbo had usually given new presents and kept those that he received. The old hole was now being cleared a little. Every one of the various parting gifts had labels, written out personally by Bilbo, and several had some point or some joke. But of course, most of the things were given where they would be wanted and welcome. The poorer hobbits, and especially those of Bagshot Row, did very well. Old Gaffer Gamgee got 2 sacks of potatoes, a new spade, a woolen waistcoat, and a bottle of water for creaking joints. Old Rory Brandybuck, in return for much hospitality, got a dozen bottles of old Wynyards, a strong red wine from the South Farthing, and now quite mature, as it had been laid down by Bilbo's father. Rory quite forgave Bilbo, and voted him a capital fellow after the first bottle. There was plenty of everything left for Frodo, and, of course, all the chief treasures, as well as the books, pictures, and more than enough furniture were left in his possession. There was, however, no sign nor mention of money or jewelry. Not a penny piece or a glass bead was given away. Frodo had a very trying time that afternoon. A false rumor that the whole household was being distributed free spread like wildfire, and before long the place was packed with people who had no business there, but couldn't be kept out. Labels got torn off and mixed, and quarrels broke out. Some people tried to do swaps and deals in the hall, and others tried to make off with minor items not addressed to them, or with anything that seemed unwanted or unwatched. The road to the gate was blocked with barrows and handcarts. In the middle of the commotion, the Sackville Baggins
Nice,
arrived.
Chris.
Frodo had retired for a while and left his friend Merry Brandybuck to keep an eye on things. When Otho loudly demanded to see Frodo, Merry bowed politely. "He is indisposed," he said. "He is resting." "Hiding, you mean," said Lobelia. "Anyway, we want to see him, and we mean to see him. Just go and tell him so." Merry left them a long while in the hall, and they had time to discover their parting gift of spoons. It did not improve their tempers. Eventually they were shown into the study. Frodo was sitting at a table with a lot of papers in front of him. He looked indisposed, to see the Sackville Baggins at any rate, and he stood up, fidgeting with something in his pocket. But he spoke quite politely. The Sackville Bagginses were rather offensive. They began by offering him bad bargain prices, as between friends, for various valuable and unlabeled things. When Frodo replied that only the things specially directed by Bilbo were being given away, they said the whole affair was very fishy. "Only one thing is clear to me," said Otho, "and that is that you are doing exceedingly well out of it. I insist on seeing the will." Otho would have been Bilbo's heir, but for the adoption of Frodo. He read the will carefully and snorted. It was, unfortunately, very clear and correct, according to the legal customs of hobbits, which demand, among other things, 7 signatures of witnesses in red ink. "Foiled again," he said to his wife, "and after waiting 60 years. Spoons? Fiddlesticks!" He snapped his fingers under Frodo's nose and stumped off, but Lobelia was not so easily got rid of. A little later, Frodo came out of the study to see how things were going on, and found her still about the place, investigating nooks and corners and tapping the floors. He escorted her firmly off the premises, after he had relieved her of several small but rather valuable articles that had somehow fallen inside her umbrella. Her face looked as if she was in the throes of thinking out a really crushing parting remark, but all she found to say,
hell yeah, Chris, that's good.
"You live to regret it, young fellow. Why didn't you go too? You don't belong here.
My mom likes birds too. She likes little ones.
Brandybuck." "Did you hear that, Mary? That was an insult, if you like," said Frodo as he shut the door on her. "It was a compliment," said Merry Brandybuck. "And so, of course, not true." Then they went round the hole, and evicted 3 young hobbits, 2 boffins and a bolger, who were knocking holes in the walls of one of the cellars. Frodo also had a tussle with young Sancho Proudfoot, old Odo Proudfoot's grandson, who had begun an excavation in the larger pantry, where he thought there was an echo. The legend of Bilbo's gold excited both curiosity and hope.
Oh, are they?
The legend
I didn't know that. That's
mysteriously
pretty cool.
obtained, if not positively ill-gotten, is, as everyone knows, anyone's for the finding, unless the search is interrupted. When he'd overcome Sancho and pushed him out, Frodo collapsed on a chair in the hall. "It's time to close the shop, Merry," he said. "Lock the door and don't open it to anyone today, not even if they bring a battering ram." Then he went to revive himself with a belated cup of tea. He'd hardly sat down when there came a soft knock at the front door. Lobelia again, most likely, he thought. She must have thought of something really nasty and have come back again to say it. It can wait.
Hell yeah.
He went on with his tea.
That's pretty cool.
The knock was repeated, much louder, but he took no notice. Suddenly, the wizard's head appeared at the window.
All right, I'm going to call into this live
If you
for tonight.
don't let me in, Frodo, I shall blow your door
Be
right
back
down
on
your
again
hole
tomorrow
and out
night.
through the hill.
But I want to thank everyone for stopping by and everyone who
Minute,
continues
cried
to stop
Frodo,
by.
running out of the room to the door.
I
Come in. I
definitely
thought it was
appreciate
Lobelia. Then I forgive you.
all y'all's support. Till next time, everyone. Y'all stay safe out there.